The decision won't come before Monday, and the debate is far from over about whether a Confederate monument will remain in downtown St. Augustine. As On Your Side's Jeff Vallon reports, there are some who claim the decision is already a foregone conclusion.
In my mind, those shared values of inclusiveness are going to outweigh the historical concern.
St. Augustine Mayor Tracy Upchurch looking ahead to a vote likely to happen at the City Commission meeting this coming Monday about possibly relocating this monument at the Plaza de la Constitución, bearing the names of more than 40 Confederate soldiers. The mayor's apparent prediction isn't sitting well with the St. Johns County Veterans Council chairman.
We feel that the mayor has made a mistake in taking the position that he has, even expressing that before he has put it before the full council.
Bill Dudley, who served 20 years in the Air Force, started an online petition Friday that had more than 1,800 signatures as of Saturday afternoon.
In May of 1958, Congress passed legislation giving veteran status to all Confederate soldiers.
I am torn on the subject because I recognize that they were soldiers.
Vermel Smith of St. Augustine also served 20 years in the Air Force.
They fought for a different flag. The flag they fought for was to tear our country apart and for my people to remain enslaved.
Smith says she wants the structure removed from public property. A frequently mentioned destination if the monument is relocated is a cemetery. Dudley says that would be an attempt to rewrite history.
We're not saying that the cause was a correct cause. We are supporting those veterans.
In St. Augustine, Jeff Vallon, First Coast News, On Your Side.